Listen carefully, because what you're about to hear isn't comforting, and it isn't casual. It's disruptive. It's the kind of truth that rearranges how you see yourself when the video ends. Somewhere beyond emotion, beyond symbolism, something happened that almost never happens. God didn't observe. He didn't gently acknowledge. He didn't quietly approve. He reacted, loudly, with urgency, with force, with a response so intense that it sent shockwaves through spiritual dimensions most humans will never consciously perceive. God shouted. And the reason may challenge everything you've been taught about what truly matters. Not because you performed something dramatic, not because you were flawless, not because you were famous, religious, or visibly powerful. It was because of something far more rare, something almost extinct: your attitude. Right now, as you're hearing this, part of you is already trying to disqualify yourself. You're thinking this must be for someone else, someone cleaner, someone stronger, someone more spiritual. But that thought is exactly why this message reached you. Because people who carry real power almost never recognize it. They normalize it, they downplay it, they survive with it quietly. And before we go any further, take a second to support this message. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because what you're about to learn isn't repeated often, and it doesn't reach people by accident. What provoked the divine response wasn't a single decision. It wasn't one moment of bravery. It wasn't a visible sacrifice. It was the way you've continued to exist when no one was rewarding you for it. The way you respond when there's no applause. The way you carry yourself after disappointment, betrayal, injustice, exhaustion. That consistent internal posture is rarer than miracles, and it's something the spiritual realm monitors constantly. Most humans misunderstand power because they focus on actions. Actions are loud, they're visible, they can be staged, they can be manipulated. Someone can do something good today and become destructive tomorrow. Actions fluctuate with mood, benefit, pressure, and reward. But attitude doesn't operate that way. Attitude is the pattern beneath the behavior. It's who you are when circumstances give you permission to become something worse. That's why millions of good deeds don't move the heavens, but one uncorrupted attitude can trigger immediate response. Because attitude can't be sustained through suffering unless it's real. Eventually, masks crack. Eventually, people reveal what they are. And you were observed through seasons that should have broken you. You were watched when bitterness would have been reasonable, when cruelty would have been justified, when withdrawal would have been safer. And yet, something in you refused to rot. That refusal is what echoed upward. There are moments in history when divine response had to interrupt reality. Not often, almost never. When Abraham lifted the blade, it wasn't admiration that stopped him. It was urgency. When laws were given that would shape civilizations, they weren't whispered. When sacrifice reached completion, the response wasn't symbolic. And now, something else demanded immediate recognition, not because of what you did once, but because of what you refused to become over time. Pause here for a moment. If this resonates, comment 777 below. Not for superstition, for alignment, for acknowledgement, because awareness changes how power operates. What happened next is what stunned everything watching. The one presence that never stopped speaking stopped. The accuser, the critic, the voice that catalogs every flaw, every inconsistency, every weakness humanity displays. Silence, total. Not because mercy intervened, but because there was nothing to attack that hadn't already been disproven by consistency. You see, flaws can be accused, mistakes can be exploited, past failures can be weaponized, but an attitude that remains intact through years of pressure doesn't leave room for argument. When character survives without reward, without recognition, without protection, accusation collapses. That silence wasn't respect, it was inability. And that's when everything shifted. Because when accusation fails, protection activates. Understand this clearly. Your consistency made you visible, and visibility attracts both attention and opposition. The betrayals you experienced weren't random. The disproportionate resistance wasn't coincidence. Pressure increases around uncorruptible people, because the only way to neutralize them is internal decay. But that strategy failed. You didn't stay kind because you were naive. You stayed kind because your core wouldn't tolerate becoming something else. You didn't remain honest because it benefited you. You remained honest because lying would have cost you yourself. You didn't forgive because it was easy. You forgave because carrying resentment felt heavier than releasing it. That kind of integrity costs, and cost is proof. If you're still listening, like this video right now. It helps this message reach others who are quietly carrying the same weight without understanding why. There are 3 signals that confirm the authenticity of your attitude. First, continuity. You didn't switch when conditions changed. You didn't perform selectively. Who you were in private matched who you were in isolation, exhaustion, and loss. Second, sacrifice. You paid for your integrity. Relationships, comfort, opportunities, ease. Purity without cost doesn't exist. Third, detachment from reward. You weren't waiting for compensation. You didn't behave well to manipulate outcomes. You stayed aligned because misalignment felt worse than suffering. When those 3 align over time, something is declared. Untouchable doesn't mean unchallenged. It means protected at a level that alters how opposition functions. That declaration triggered something ancient, a seal. Not symbolic, recognizable. A boundary that informs every realm. Interference now carries consequence. Protection followed immediately, not requested, assigned. Some of the near misses you've experienced weren't luck. Some of the people who suddenly stopped targeting you didn't change their mind. Some of the situations that dissolved before escalating weren't coincidence. Intervention happened before impact. Information also began arriving at the exact moment you needed it. Clarity when confusion should have ruled. Insight that felt downloaded rather than reasoned. Healing that outpaced explanation. Discernment that saved you from irreversible decisions. None of that was accidental. Support was mobilized quietly because visibility increases responsibility. And here's the part most people misunderstand. Protection doesn't remove hardship. It redirects damage. It ensures survival without corrosion. If this is confirming something you've sensed for a long time, subscribe now. This channel speaks to those who don't need motivation, but recognition. What the silence of the accuser means practically is this. Attacks no longer attach. Darkness requires resonance. It needs something inside you to hook into. When that resonance doesn't exist, energy returns to its source. That's why some people who intended harm toward you are unraveling while you're stabilizing. Not because you wish them harm, but because integrity creates reflection. You don't need revenge. Correction is automatic. But privilege always carries expectation. Awareness changes responsibility. From this point forward, unconscious purity isn't enough. Your attitude now operates as influence. Every time you choose restraint where cruelty would be easier, something recalibrates beyond your immediate life. Every time you forgive without performance, you unblock paths for people you'll never meet. Every time you give without calculating return, you reinforce abundant systems that eventually reach you physically. You're not isolated in this. There are others, few, scattered, recognizable. When you encounter them, you'll know. Not by words, by presence, by a familiar calm forged through resistance. These connections won't be loud, but when aligned, they neutralize environments. That's why isolation was encouraged around you. Unity amplifies integrity. And something is approaching, not fantasy, alignment. Within the coming cycle, stagnation will lift. What felt immovable will respond. Opportunities aligned with your ethics, not compromises, will appear. Rest will deepen. Anxiety will loosen. Provision will arrive through roots that match your nature, not excess. Sufficiency with peace. You were placed in this era intentionally. This moment requires people who won't rot under pressure, who won't adapt to decay, who won't excuse corruption as realism. Your role isn't dramatic, it's stabilizing, and stability saves more than spectacle ever could. Watch the world closely. What's collapsing was hollow. What's emerging needs integrity to survive. Before this ends, comment again. 777. If you recognize this truth in yourself, share this with someone whose kindness you've seen tested. And stay connected, because messages like this don't repeat themselves for the same people twice. You were never weak, you were restrained, and restraint, when chosen consciously, becomes force. Stay aligned,